Hi, and welcome back to Classic Guitar Rock. I'm Jeremy, and our album you should own for today. Man, this one had a big impact on my life. Okay, much of my formative years were spent listening to this album, and actually the album that came right before it also. So the album in question today is Def Leppard's High and Dry. Came out in 1981, produced by Mutt Lange. And in my humble opinion, this is Def Leppard's best album. This was the last album they made before they became a band for girls. And I don't mean that as a slam, right? I'm not gonna knock on anyone who is as popular and talented as Def Leppard. They're still a great live band. But with the advent of MTV, you started to see it on Pyromania, and by Hysteria, they were a full-on, and when I say girls band, you know what I mean, right? They were a mainstream, major touring, recording act that probably more girls bought Hysteria than guys did. It's just the reality, right? But this album, just a great rock and roll album. And I want to take you back to their first album, also a great album. On the first album, when this came out in 1980, actually recorded in 1979, produced by Tom Allom, who's actually produced some Judas Priest stuff. Here's what you'd hear, right? Yeah, these guys are so great for teenagers, right? They were still 16, 17 years old when this album came out. And it was always said, it's a great album, great album for a bunch of teenagers, which maybe wasn't fair, right? But when this album came out, it was no longer, this is a great album from a bunch of teenagers. It was, this is a great album. And it really is a great album. Now think of Mutt Lange, right? He is one of the big time producers, produced a lot of AC/DC, obviously. Later on, Bryan Adams, Shania Twain. You know what's funny? You listen to Shania Twain and it's Def Leppard's drums, right? They've got that, listen to Wake Up the Neighbors by Bryan Adams. It's like you just change the head of the lead singer. Wake Up the Neighbors sounds like Hysteria Part 2, right? People, I think I'm crazy when I say that. Go listen to Wake Up the Neighbors by Bryan Adams and stick Joe Elliott's voice on there. It's a Def Leppard album. That's what a strong producer will do for you, right? But you definitely hear that. Now think of when this came out. Back in Black came out in 1980. This came out in 81. Just from the production alone, man, you can tell it's Mutt Lange, right? And that's a good thing. I'm not slamming Mutt Lange at all. He's a phenomenal producer. And I think one of the things that he did with Def Leppard, and they'll even tell you this, to the point that on the Hysteria album especially, he drove them crazy, right? Because he was so demanding and would make them do it again and again and again. And they would think they had a great take. He'd say, nope, we're going to do it again. And probably not to that extent on this album, but a lot of the same stuff was going on here. Is he just milked the best out of the artists that he worked with, and took them to a new level. An interesting thing about this album cover, by the way, I was wondering, what the heck does this, what does this even mean? I don't know what this means. Well, apparently there are companies, I don't remember the company, but companies that just would make stuff, make album covers and do graphic art for various bands or whatever. And this was just some generic thing that they had made with the guy diving and the guys around it. And this could have very easily been a Pink Floyd album, or anyone who bought this could have just slapped their logo on it. So I just thought that was kind of interesting and kind of disappointing at the same time, because I like to think that the band sits around and talks about what their album cover is going to look like. They had no idea. The record company just put this out. All of a sudden, they see this guy in a Speedo diving into an empty pool surrounded by a bunch of goobers in black and white. So anyways, that's the album cover. That's how it came to be. One of the things that always irked me about this, by the way, is it lists all the tracks on the back of the album, but not in order. It just says all the songs that are on there. So the track listing is actually different when you get on the actual albums. But here's the band at the time, right? Remember Pete Willis? Pete Willis. He was on the first album. On this album, he's on the early MTV videos where they're playing On Through the Night and Let It Go. I think they had videos for. But this was the last recorded appearance he made with Def Leppard. Actually, I think he might have done some of the rhythm tracks on Pyromania before they fired him and brought in Phil Collen. The story goes that Pete just drank too much, which if you get kicked out of Def Leppard for drinking too much, you're really drinking a lot because I think they drank a lot. But this was the album that really put them on the map. It was on this album that they were opening for AC/DC. I think they did a tour opening for Pat Travers, Ted Nugent. I mean, they were just opening for major acts at the time. And then, of course, the album after this, Pyromania, man, then they became one of the biggest bands in the world. And, of course, Hysteria, that just opened the whole thing up. But for pure, great rock and roll, this album is hard to beat. There is not a stinker on here. I guess my least favorite song on here would probably be No, No, No. No, No, No has the sound to me. It's kind of a filler. And it's funny. If you've only listened to the DVD, if you've only listened to the CD version or the Spotify version or whatever, the digital version of this album, No, No, No just ends at the end of the song, no, 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 and then it's over, right? Well, on the album, it ends, no, 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 no. I counted it one time, and I think he says no like 41 times. And that's the last song on side 2. And so I can remember as a kid, I'd listen to that and it'd play out, no, 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 no. And then my little automatic turn. Remember when you had the little arm on your turntable, you'd stack up 5 LPs, and that's how your records got all scratched, by the way. You'd stack up 5 LPs on your little record changer, and they'd slap down on top of each other and spin around on each. Oh. But anyways, yeah, he'd scream no, 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 like 41 times at the end of that song until finally the album ended, right? But just a super solid album. Joe Elliott sings great. The guitars are great. It opens strong. Let It Go right into another hit and run. Just awesome. High and Dry, one of my favorite songs. You know, I think my favorite song on the album, boy, it's hard to pick. I love You Got Me Running. I love Lady Strange. Just these great songs that unless you have the album, you've never heard these songs, but they're awesome. And they could easily have been huge hits, in my opinion. You Got Me Running, Lady Strange, just great, great rock and roll hooks, great guitar playing, and just a good album. Everything about this album is phenomenal. Def Leppard, still a great band. If you can catch them live, do so. Joe Elliott, I mean, Joe's got to be late 50s, mid to late 50s. Obviously, he can't sing like he could before. And Joe was never known as like a great vocalist, but he had a very unique style that worked very well with the music. And I think what he's been able to do is he doesn't try and hit notes he can't hit anymore. I mean, I think he knows his limitations. They still sound really, really good live. Obviously a tragedy when Steve Clark died. They brought Vivian Campbell in, who's a phenomenal guitar player. My disappointing thing now when I see Def Leppard is it seems like they make Vivian take a back seat to Phil. Phil's a great player too, but I think Vivian's better. And I get it, right? Phil was there longer and played a lot of these songs on the records that Vivian didn't. And actually, Phil didn't play anything on this record. But I just, personal opinion, I feel they kind of underutilized Vivian because Vivian's a monster player. I mean, of the two, I think Vivian's probably the stronger player. But you kind of get the impression that they feature Phil more. Nothing against Phil. That's just an observation on my part. But two great guitar players. So they still bring it live. Still a great band. But this, if you could only have one Def Leppard album, this is the one to have, from 1981. High and Dry, produced by Mutt Lange. Just a great record. So add it to your collection. Hey, thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.